The night I realized my wife was betraying me started like any normal evening. Dinner was on the table. The house was quiet. And my wife kissed me goodbye before leaving for what she called a late work meeting. I didn't suspect anything. Not until her phone buzzed. What? Then again. And then a third time. It was sitting right there on the kitchen counter. Unlocked. The message on the screen was only 5 words. But those 5 words destroyed my entire marriage. I miss you already, baby. Before I continue this story, let me ask you something. If you suddenly discovered the person you trusted most was hiding something, would you confront them immediately? Or would you stay quiet and find out the truth first? Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoy powerful stories about betrayal, secrets, and shocking life twists, make sure you subscribe to Broken Vows Stories. Because the truth behind that message was far worse than I ever imagined. My name is Jonathan. And for 7 years I believed I had the perfect marriage. My wife Laura was everything people admire. Smart, beautiful, charming enough to win over any room she walked into. Friends envied our relationship. My parents loved her. Even my coworkers used to joke that I had married out of my league. For a long time I believed that too. Laura always knew how to make me feel lucky. She told me I was her rock, her safe place, the man she could always trust. Looking back now, those words feel almost ironic. If you've ever been betrayed, you know the truth about lies. They don't start big. They start small. Laura began coming home later from work. At first it was once a week, then twice. Eventually it became normal for her to say things like, "I'm meeting a client. I have to stay late. Don't wait up." Every time I asked questions, she had answers ready. Perfect answers. The kind that sound just convincing enough to silence your doubts. And because I loved her, I believed them. That night everything changed. Laura left around 7 p.m. She said she had a meeting downtown. But 15 minutes after she left, her phone buzzed. Then again. I tried to ignore it. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. Eventually I looked at the screen. And that's when I saw it. A name I didn't recognize. Ryan. The message preview read, "I miss you already, baby." My stomach dropped. For a moment I told myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe it was meant for someone else. Maybe Ryan was joking. Maybe. But then another message appeared. And this one was worse. At that moment something inside me shifted. Because suddenly every late night, every client meeting, every strange excuse started making sense. But I still needed proof. So instead of confronting Laura that night, I did something she never expected. I waited. Over the next week I began noticing things I had ignored before. Laura guarded her phone constantly. She smiled at messages she never showed me. She left the room to take calls. And every time I asked about her day, her answers became shorter, more distant, like she was already somewhere else. Emotionally, mentally, maybe even physically. But the real truth came one Friday night. Laura told me she was meeting coworkers for drinks. Instead of staying home, I followed her. Not because I wanted to spy on her, but because I needed to know if my marriage was real, or just a story I had been telling myself. She drove across town, past the office, past the restaurants, past the places she said she usually went, until finally, she parked outside a small apartment building, and 5 minutes later, a man walked out to meet her. They hugged, then they kissed. Watching that moment felt surreal, like I was seeing someone else's life, someone else's heartbreak. But the worst part wasn't the kiss. It was the way Laura smiled at him. The same smile she used to give me. And that's when I realized something painful. My wife hadn't just cheated. She had replaced me. When Laura came home that night, she found me sitting in the living room. Lights off. Her phone on the table. The message thread open. For the first time since I'd known her, Laura looked scared. "Jonathan, what is this?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shout. I just asked one question. "How long?" Laura tried to lie at first. Then she tried to cry. Then she tried to blame me. But eventually, the truth came out. She had been seeing Ryan for almost a year. An entire year. While still telling me she loved me. While still sharing a home with me. While still pretending our marriage mattered. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Laura moved in with Ryan. At least, that's what she thought would happen. But relationships built on betrayal rarely survive the truth. 3 months after our divorce, I heard from a mutual friend. Ryan had left her. Apparently, he decided he didn't trust someone who cheated on their husband. Funny how karma works like that. As for me, losing my marriage hurt. But discovering the truth saved my life. Because sometimes the person who betrays you is the one who accidentally sets you free. Do you think this story was shocking? Wait until you hear the next one. So if you love dramatic stories about betrayal, secrets, and unexpected karma, make sure you subscribe to Broken Vows Stories and turn on notifications, because the next story might be even more unbelievable than this one. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. Just when I thought I had uncovered the worst of Laura's betrayal, something even stranger happened. One afternoon while I was leaving work, my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I ignore those, but something told me to answer. Hello. There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then a woman's voice spoke. Are you Jonathan? Yes, I said cautiously. Another pause. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. I think you deserve to know the truth about your wife. My heart started pounding. Who is this? I asked. My name doesn't matter, she replied. But what your wife is doing, does. I walked out to the parking lot, suddenly aware that my life might be even more complicated than I thought. What are you talking about? I asked. The woman hesitated. Then she said something that chilled me to the bone. Ryan isn't the only man. For a moment I couldn't process what she meant. What do you mean? I asked slowly. She exhaled quietly. I mean your wife has been seeing multiple people. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. You're lying, I said automatically. I wish I was, she replied. Then she said something that made my hands start shaking. I know because one of those men is my husband. Before I could say anything else, my phone buzzed. A text message. From the same number. It was a photo. And the moment I opened it, my chest tightened. Because the photo showed Laura, sitting at a restaurant table, across from a man I had never seen before. And they weren't just talking. They were holding hands. At that moment I realized something terrifying. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage was only the surface. Because Laura wasn't just living a double life. She was living several. And I had no idea how deep the lies went. But one thing was certain. If I wanted the truth, I was going to have to dig deeper than I ever had before. When Laura finally admitted the affair, she didn't start by apologizing. She started by blaming me. You've been distant, she said. You worked too much. You stopped paying attention to me. It was like she had rehearsed the speech 100 times. For a moment, I almost believed her. Because when someone lies to you long enough, the hardest part isn't catching the lie. It's remembering what the truth looked like before they rewrote it. But then I remembered the messages, the plans, the months of secrets, and suddenly the guilt she was trying to place on me felt ridiculous. I needed to know who Ryan really was. So the next day I did something I had never done before. I looked him up. Social media, workplace profiles, anything I could find. And the deeper I searched, the stranger things became. Ryan didn't just know my wife. He knew our entire life. There were photos of him at places Laura told me she went with coworkers, restaurants, concerts, even the same beach where Laura and I celebrated our anniversary. Except now I knew something terrifying. While I thought I was building memories with my wife, she was building a second life with someone else. A few days later, Laura said she needed to work late again. Normally, that sentence would have crushed me. But this time, I was ready. Instead of staying home, I followed her. Not because I wanted to spy, but because I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. She drove across the city, past the office she claimed she was going to, past the business district, until finally she stopped outside a quiet apartment complex. And 5 minutes later, Ryan walked outside. He wrapped his arms around her, and she kissed him, like I didn't exist. But the strangest part of that night wasn't watching my wife betray me. It was something else. Something neither of them noticed. As they walked into the building together, another man stepped out of the shadows. He was holding a phone, and he was recording them. At first I thought he was just another neighbor, until he walked over to my car, knocked on the window, and said something I'll never forget. You're Jonathan, right? My heart started pounding. How do you know my name? He smiled slightly. Because I've been looking for you. The man introduced himself as Mark, and what he told me next changed everything. Ryan wasn't just cheating with my wife. He had been involved with multiple married women, including Mark's. For over 2 years, Ryan had built a reputation for chasing married women, manipulating them, destroying families, and somehow, Laura had become his latest target. But the worst part? Ryan knew Laura was married, and he didn't care. That night, Mark and I sat in a parking lot for almost an hour, two strangers connected by the same betrayal. And slowly we realized something. Ryan believed he was untouchable. Laura believed she could live two lives without consequences. But neither of them knew something important. The truth was about to catch up with both of them. 3 weeks later, everything collapsed. Ryan's workplace discovered his affairs with clients' spouses. He was fired. Laura's secret relationship became public among our mutual friends. And suddenly the perfect image she had built for years shattered overnight. But the most surprising part? Watching Laura realize that the man she betrayed me for was never planning to stay. A month later, Laura tried to call me. Then text. Then email. But I never responded. Because sometimes closure doesn't come from answers. Sometimes it comes from silence. And the night I discovered my wife's secret phone, I thought my life was ending. But in reality, it was the night I finally took it back.